Hello, welcome to GeoBytes, your daily roundup of news from geospatial industry. I'm your host Bhanu. For the next 15 minutes, I will bring you the news of the top developments across projects, products, policies, and business. Google Earth has celebrated its 10th birthday, and to commemorate the event, it has introduced a new feature called the Voyager. Voyager is a new layer for Earth that lets you visually explore the world through new and interesting images. It is only available for Google Earth desktop users right now, but then the images are so breathtaking you will enjoy seeing them on a big screen. The first edition of Voyager will give users 5 sections to explore, namely the Street View, Earth View, 3D Cities, Satellite Imagery, and the Highlight. These would showcase highlights from Street View, including the Grand Canyon, show striking landscapes as seen from space, give users a glimpse of cities in photorealistic 3D, and so on. In August 2005, when Google Earth was in its evolutionary stages, Hurricane Katrina showed how useful mapping tools could be for crisis response efforts. Rescue workers compared before and after satellite imagery in Google Earth to better locate where people were stranded. Since then, Google Earth has been downloaded by more than 2 billion people in nearly every country in the world. Google Maps took to Twitter yesterday to wish Google Earth. It said, "Happy 10th birthday, Google Earth. You don't look a day over 4.54 billion. Google employee Andrew Kimsey was part of Google Earth's launch process. He called in a post on Google+ how farmers in India used historical imagery to receive compensation for their land when a new highway was being built. The government claimed that the land was not under cultivation when the highway was planned, but Earth's historical image showed otherwise." Amazon Web Services Public Sector Symposium recently concluded in Washington, D.C. Michael Donnelly, geospatial data architect at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, revealed that the DHS has found a solution for emergency big data and cloud processing. The agency is using an imagery hosting web service called Terrapixel to upload, manage, store, and deliver unlimited amounts of data to first responders. The service allows them to see imagery from the past 24 hours. Donnelly said it was essential that the folks on the ground managing situations had the same information that the headquarters possessed. Since Terrapixel transfers data with GIS-based information, responders can see the incidents happening nearest to them when they access the platform. Success with Terrapixel has also cemented the department's commitment to investing in cloud technology, Donnelly affirms. Many of you would have seen that satellite maps depicting wildfires in Alaska have been making the rounds on Facebook and Twitter lately. There are over 300 fires in Alaska currently in various stages, some active, some smoldering, and some in the process of being demobilized. And these maps have put them into perspective. Packed with information like the name of the fire, when it was discovered, and how many acres it covers, the maps update every hour from the latest available data from the NASA's Terra and Aqua satellites and the NPP Suomi spacecraft from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration NOAA. This real-time information is absolutely vital for firefighters and other first responders so that they can manage the fires, monitor air quality, and inform those who live in the affected areas. Moving forward, agriculture equipment company Case IH has launched its new precision Air 5 series air carts. The air cart, which boasts of accurate seed and fertilizer placement, uses AccuSection section control technology to help producers do more work in less time. The technology uses individual electronic meter drives to provide primary run control on a per meter basis. The cart is developed to work with the Case IH Advanced Farming Systems Pro 700 Control Center. This enables simple and easy monitoring and operation of meters, section control technology applications, bin level, and other air cart sensors. Canada-based cleantech company Blumetric Environmental has been awarded a 5-year engineering services contract by mining company Vale Canada. The $2.6 million contract would see Blumetric undertake tasks like drilling, monitoring, pumping of wells, and groundwater sampling. It would then incorporate the data collected into a GIS-based environmental information system. We will now slip into a short break, but when we return, we will take a look at other regions of the world.
Once again, Trimble is leading the way in positioning technology with the new Trimble R8S GNSS receiver. An entirely new way to look at receiver possibilities. Simply choose the configuration and features you require today. Then, add features as you need them tomorrow. It's the ultimate in scalability. With this innovative receiver, you tailor your system to your job, to the way you work. Choose the level of configuration that suits your needs. As your requirements change, the Trimble R8S can adapt. You simply add functionality whenever you want it. Each Trimble R8S comes standard with integrated Maxwell 6 chips, Trimble 360 tracking technology, and more. All to keep you productive and expand the reach of your GNSS system. Plus, it offers our exclusive web UI for remote monitoring and the new Trimble DL Android app for GNSS data logging. And the Trimble R8S maximizes productivity by easily integrating with the Trimble S-Series total stations and our innovative V10 imaging rover. For ultimate field efficiency, combine the Trimble R8S receiver with a Trimble controller and the intuitive Trimble Access Field software. Trust Trimble Business Center to help you edit, process, and adjust your data. It's the kind of solution you have come to expect from Trimble. We've been setting the standard in positioning technology for more than 30 years. See how we're raising the bar again with the Trimble R8S GNSS receiver.
Welcome back. European Union's Copernicus Environmental Monitoring Program's first optical Earth observation satellite, Sentinel-2A, has started beaming images back to the Earth. The satellite's first acquisition began in Sweden and made a strip-like observation through Central Europe and the Mediterranean, ending in Algeria. What you're seeing now is the first image delivered by the satellite. This is northwest Italy and southern France. The data were relayed in real time to Italy's Matera ground station. Italy's typical sunny weather also allowed scientists to get their first glimpse of the multispectral instrument's capabilities over the French Riviera. With a ground resolution of 10 meters per pixel, the images showed individual buildings in Milan, agriculture plots along the Po River, and ports along the southern French coast. Right now on your screen is a close-up of an area in the Po Valley. Beautiful, isn't it? Moving on, India's state-controlled coal mining company, Coal India, is contemplating a new land monitoring system. The company wants to automate the maintenance of satellite and cadastral data on land parcels and tracking of land acquisition. The company's consulting arm, the Central Mine Planning and Design Institute, is currently selecting firms to develop a web-based cadastral level and acquisition monitoring system. The proposed system will compile the information into a comprehensive geodatabase of parcels. It would include attributes such as area, land type, and ownership. Senior officials say that a satellite-based system would help them to see exactly what they are acquiring today and what they would be getting tomorrow. UK-based LFM software has come with a technology that would provide intelligent laser scan data to the fingertips of engineering, construction, design, and operational teams in a single dataset. The laser scanning software solutions provider has introduced 3D markup functionality to its laser scan technology portfolio. LFM NetView and LFM Server will now allow users to add, access, and share asset intelligence in the form of tag identifiers, attributes, comments, and links. Moreover, the new capabilities provide secure, on-demand access to laser scan data via company networks or the internet. Tablet enablement and the facility to take data offline allow remote use for inspection tasks and on-site reviews. As the 15th Pacific Games open in Papua New Guinea this weekend, Airbus Defence and Space and CIPAC have produced a map of the sports facilities. The map has been produced by using imagery from Earth observation satellites Pleiades 1A and Pleiades 1B. The map shows that the capital city of Port Moresby has invested heavily in refurbishing, building, and developing its facilities. The map produced shows the locations of the sports sites, tourist attractions, and hotels. In another development from the region, the board of the Spatial Industries Business Association (SIBA) has launched its Pacific Islands chapter. The development is a result of a November 2014 meeting where SIBA General Manager Kelly Ireland met with Michael Peterson, Director of Secretariat of the Pacific Community, to discuss the feasibility of a Pacific Islands chapter. SIBA will help member organizations from the 22 islands in making submissions to government, providing business opportunities through tender alerts, networking events, specific business tools, and direct business support. That's all we have for you in GeoBytes today. Find us on www.geobiz.com and follow GeoBuiz on Twitter. See you soon with GeoBuiz Exclusive.
tell us a little bit about Geo and what it is that you do in the organization?
We have a lot of obviously formidable competitors in the mapping space.
But saying human geo, I was like perplexed. Why the name human to the geospatial angle?
If we think about land, I mean, land is a key core to prosperity.
Thank you, Hugo, for speaking with GeoBuiz and Geospatial World. Hello and welcome to GeoBuiz Live. Today we have a special guest with us, Joe Jackson from Thomson Reuters. Welcome, Joe. Thanks for joining us on this show. Can you just
Thanks for having me.
Introduce yourself for our audience, please?
I'm Managing Director for Thomson Reuters, Tax and Accounting Government Business Segment.
To start with the interview, I would like to ask you, the UN Habitat estimates that about 70% of all the developing countries, the land in these countries is not documented. Do you see the need? What is the need to be the land to be documented, and how does the urgency for the governments to document the land?
Sure, I think it's an extremely urgent matter, and if we think about land, I mean, land is a key core to prosperity, and it's for a society, and governments want to be good stewards of lands, and therefore, if they are, they can help make land be a prosperous component of their economies. And even for an individual, it's important, right? So land can be the foundation for their own value and their purpose, and even for the rights for an individual to get property and work on the property, or just to pass that property along to their families. It's very important. And I think it was, Adam Smith, the Scottish economist, in his work, The Wealth of Nations, he commented that there's three aspects to productivity, and it's labor, capital, and land. So if 70% of land in developing economies is untapped or unregistered, or there's not a good measure against it, it's a piece of that economic factor of productivity that just will be stagnant. And it's government's responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. In
the context of the increasingly globalized world, how do you see this to be a very urgent need for governments?
Well, it's just it's constantly an issue, and I think that unless they take a forceful effort to deal with it, it's one of those things that's not going to work itself out. And so governments need to take action to deal with the aspects of their modernization of their land and projects around that, and find partners, I think, that can make that a reality.
How do you see this as an opportunity for the private industry?
Well, I think for private industry, it's a great opportunity because for us at Thomson Reuters, we have a core solution. Our Momentum product is specifically for the purpose of helping governments to modernize their process that allows to deal with registry and valuation of properties and revenue generation from properties and all that's associated with it and all the integrated aspects of that. So governments need to find partners that can help them deal with this issue.
Okay, great. As you have said, it is a great need in the current scenario that governments really work to add value to the economy, and that requires a lot of transparency and increased productivity in terms of the land and the land administration systems. So how is Thomson Reuters enabling the governments in this aspect through its solutions?
Well, I think we do a very good job of that, and that's at the core of what our product is about, and it provides transparency. So if you're going to untap that productive aspect of land, it's imperative to have a system that can make sure that it's a fair and equitable, transparent solution around that. And especially if we talked about an individual, if an individual is going to be able to leverage their land and to go get a mortgage, they need to have the assurances that they can do that. If a private firm is going to invest with a plant or properties in an area, they want to make sure and have assurances of the land rights and ownership. And even if it could entail itself in the rights of people on the land. So there could be government-private partnerships that are enabling lease arrangements for extractives, like a timber agreement. And if that occurs, the government should make sure that the people around that society their rights aren't being trampled on by that arrangement. So transparency around all of this, I think, helps this all be pushed forward in a positive light.
Talking specifically about Thomson Reuters product, I see that Momentum is simplifying the revenue management life cycle for the governance. Would you like to share a bit more about this particular?
Yeah, it's really at its core. It's about land registry, the rights, valuation and revenue generation around the land and the resources on the land. And it also is a big part, it's technological aspect, that's the core. But we also bring expertise, consultants and expertise and continuing support for a product like that. And it really goes towards modernization projects that many governments around developing economies around the globe are taking on right now.
As we were just discussing, about 80% of land in the developing world is still do not have, or rather they are continuing with the informal registrations. So when moving to the developing world, how is Thomson Reuters enabling the governments in that particular scenarios where there are no processes set up to do the formal registrations?
Yes, I mean it's a pretty amazing statistic, right? 80%,
yes.
And I've heard the same thing. And whether it's interesting, it's hard to say whether it's what's the cause of that? Is it lack of political will? Is it corruption? Mm-hmm. Is it just legacy bulk systems that are hard to get off of? Regardless of why it is that way, I think as we've said, it's imperative for governments to take this initiative to change. And if they're really going to make a change in how we in private industry, especially Thomson Reuters, can make a difference on that number, I think it comes down to one key aspect of it is around sustainability. And if I think about sustainability, I think of it in two main ways. First of all, sustainability about the ability of a government to have a process in place where they can accurately and correctly have registry around their land, assess that land, and then drive the revenues from it. And these revenues are critical because if they're going to prop up their citizenry and the population as a result of that land, they need to derive revenues. And the financing that can be derived on a regular basis from those revenues can help push the society forward. So if they're going to do this and they can empower people to better their careers, help with education, maybe accreditation for their ability to put themselves in a better position to succeed. A society needs that, and the government needs to support that regular generation of revenues. That's the first level of sustainability. The second level is the technology and the capability behind that to make that a reality, and that's where we come in. So with our working with governments and their modernization projects, we can give them a solution that meets the need to continually put transparency and process around that revenue generation and the assessment and dealing with lands and the transactions around lands. And by doing that, it gives them a sustainable system for time. If we look at the U.S. as a great example of looking at sustainability in these systems, we've been working for over 40 years, thousands of jurisdictions around the U.S. on dealing with eliminating legacy mainframe systems, right? True. These green screens, if you will. And these were systems that were developed at a point in time, 30, 40 plus years ago. They fit the purpose, but they weren't sustainable for long term. So that's why they're getting off of these systems. They're costly. They could cost, in some jurisdictions, over $1 million a year just to keep them running. It's hard to find people that can maintain and manage and modify these systems. And so that's a big part of sustainability too. So these modernization projects and taking a system like Momentum that we have, it gives more a sustainable long-term outlook towards the solutions that can really advance and hopefully make a difference on this 80% number that it really is impactful.
You have actually, Thomson Reuters has worked in several developing countries. Would you like to cite an example of a success story?
One thing that I do think about is we have a lot of different projects, but a lot of projects in Africa. One place where it's a really great success story is in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And we developed or implemented the Momentum system a couple years ago in Cross River State. Mm-hmm. And that was a great project along with the modernization project with that state, Nigeria. It was a good implementation. It took about 3 years though. So I think the interesting part of this story though is that was a success, but it was a sustainable and also scalable system. We were able to take that system, and then Plateau State, Nigeria, after that did an implementation with basically the same system, and that implementation took 9 months. So that's a great example of where you take a system that, like Aumentum, you go into a new market like Nigeria, in the states within Nigeria. The primary work is relevant not only for that state, but all the states that have the same legislative requirements and policy. And so by then being able to put that in place in another state, and then future states hopefully as well, it really shows what can help make a difference for governments when they take that approach.
Okay, great, wonderful. I also see that governments require, when they start building their land administration systems, they require complete solutions as well. So how Thomson Reuters is enabling governments to provide that complete solution, end-to-end solutions? Where does Thomson Reuters fit in the complete workflow of a government land administration?
You know, I think when we look at that, I think what in the private sector and the government sector, really integration becomes a key aspect now, right? So many people have very disparate systems that they're functional in certain areas, and they have to take data and push it to another system or manually put data in. And so what Aumentum is really about is the integration of the entire process. So whether it's the mapping or the land registry, cadastral, it could be the valuation, property tax aspects, Aumentum brings all that together in an integrated approach. So by taking that type of a solution, there are many benefits for that integration, and they could be just from the data aspect. You don't have to move data around from one system to another, and there's potential loss of data when you're doing that. There's ease of use on the system side, because there's one interface that all these different users who were using different systems, they're more adept at it. They're more easily trained on the system to be able to benefit from the system. And the community that's being served by the system, they're better served too, because they're maybe not having to go to one service person or another office or something by dealing with this one integrated system. So Aumentum, by bringing all these aspects together, really makes a difference, and we feel it makes a difference, and it really is key to the approach of how we're approaching the market.
Many of the land administration projects are typically large, investment intensive, technology intensive, and also time intensive. So is there any effort from Thomson Reuters to make it more simple, fit for purpose, and also cost effective for the government, especially for the developing world?
Absolutely, and I think fit for purpose is an important concept, and especially as it relates to the lessening accuracy standards around registry and registration aspects, and I think what we're bringing to the marketplace is a fit for purpose. It's a scalable product that really can meet the needs of the jurisdictions that we're dealing with. And if we think about that scale can mean many different things. These green screen systems that I talked about, and retiring these systems and getting with newer technology. I mean, to be able to engage with the citizenry and get the benefits from the citizenry that they're expecting from the government, it's important. But 40 years ago, when these mainframe systems were being developed, I don't think anyone could have ever imagined that we today are going to be walking around with a computer in our pocket that we can make and receive phone calls on. We can engage with people, through email, digital correspondence. We can research anything in the world, information, just from this device in our pocket. We have live GPS mapping that's in our hand that can direct us from one place to the next. And these systems that were developed, there's no way they can tie into this. And so if you take the approach that you have a scalable system that technologically can scale and take advantage of those type things, that's an important aspect when you look at these modernization projects, and we think that's important. The other aspect I think about that we can bring to bear on this, and I think it applies, is around security too. So not only do you need a sustainable, scalable system, you need a secure system. I mean, every day in the news we see about hacks and cyber security and cyber attacks. Governments and private industry alike are putting millions and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars into defending themselves against these attacks. So the older technology, it takes more money, it takes more time, and they're not as secure. So being on up-to-date technology is critical to be able to help defend and make a more secure system. So if you think about sustainability and scalability and security, those are key elements. And what the industry now is talking about, the 3 S's. And I think it's very relevant. And any modernization project that anyone's taking on, any government institution, or any lending or donating institution that's taking on these projects, I think the 3S aspect and making sure that that's a big part of the conversation is important to make sure that this fit for purpose concept succeeds in the future.
So I hope that is also a cost-effective solution.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. My always concern has been that land is a very emotional subject, and I really feel that aspect is something that really and this technology can really help countries across the world.
Sure.
But it requires multiple stakeholder participation, and there is always seems to be a disconnect, kind of a thing between the government, between the private,
Sure.
and between the donating organizations.
Yeah.
So what is the evolving business models that you see in private-public participation so that the success of the land administration system is really ensured?
Yeah, great question. And I would say it's a very dynamic reality, right? And I would say there's not any one model. And I think the key for success is to really come into and create a conversation around really the needs and what's trying to be accomplished, what's the current situation, what's the problem trying to be solved, but really look into the future to make sure that a solution is being put in place around a modernization project that really is going to work for the long term as well. And honestly, I guess I would say, and it may sound a little self-serving, but I think the industry needs to take a little bit more of a out-of-the-box mentality on these things. I mean, sometimes we deal with proposals that have literally thousands of pages of requirements, and it's just complex, and it's a monstrosity. And sometimes when dealing with these massive requirements, you can lose the focus of what the core issues, the problem is trying to be fixed. And I think by what we're trying to do with Thomson Reuters is get engaged in the conversation earlier and look for new models of partnering with donor and lending institutions and government agencies to say, hey, let's be a part of the overall design of this solution so we can make sure it's going to be applicable, and we can take our best practices and the learnings we've had by what we've been doing for the past 40 years in the US and other developing economies, and we can make sure that there is a good fit. And I think by always pushing and challenging the conversation to make sure we're doing that, we can get better solutions. If we do that, I think working together and being really part of the conversation early on, I think we can find a way to bring together and have a financially stable and a technologically stable system that really serves the immediate need, but really is going to be a long-term solution. And that's where we'll see more successes in the industry, I think. Okay,
great. I'm sure I agree with you when you say the communication aspect is very, very key, and also to have a dialogue and evolve as you go for that particular country. Thank you so much for joining us on this show. Thank you. With sensor and platform innovation and advances in elite technologies, Earth observation is becoming easier, cost-effective, and more reliable. This has enabled improved and near real-time observation of the dynamically changing planet. So the topic of today's panel discussion in Industry Upbeat is Earth observation from space to surface. And to discuss the trends in space-based, aerial and terrestrial Earth observation, we have a panel of experts today in our studios. May I first introduce Nancy Colleton, President, Institute of Global Environmental Strategies. On my right, welcome Nancy. And also in the studio with us is Paulo Colombi, Head Geospatial Solutions from Harris Corporation. Welcome Harris. Welcome Paulo.
Thank you, Bhanu.
Okay, let me start with Nancy. Nancy, can you introduce yourself and your organization and its activities?
Sure, I'd be very happy to. First of all, let me first congratulate the GeoBuiz team on putting together this new channel, and what a wonderful resource it's going to be for our ever-changing and dynamic community.
Thank you.
So thank you. I'm very glad to be here. As you said, I'm the president of the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, which is a nonprofit corporation in Arlington, Virginia. We do work primarily in helping to promote the understanding of our changing environment and the role that observation systems play in that. We do a tremendous amount of work in the area of earth science education. And in addition, I lead the Alliance for Earth Observations, and that, again, is where we help to elevate the importance of these systems to not only better understanding our environment, but their critical impact on the economy and also areas such as national security.
Okay. Paulo, welcome to GeoBuiz Live. You have recently moved to Harris Corporation and you have had a very long expertise and experience working with the Earth observation industry. Would you mind sharing a brief about your organization?
Sure, thank you, Bhanu. Thank you for the introduction. I'm taking care of the international sales for the geospatial solutions segment of Harris. Harris is a large company. Now, more recently, we acquired, in fact, it was closed a couple of weeks ago, the acquisition of Excelis. That positioned us uniquely, in particular in geospatial, but not only geospatial. So I'm very happy to be here, and again, I join Nancy in congratulating you for the great preparation and this great opportunity to share ideas, thoughts, and trends.
Okay, great. Thank you. Nancy, I would like to ask first with you, the need and the relevance for Earth observation is constantly changing as the planet is dynamically changing. What, according to you, how is this the need and relevance of Earth observation changing?
Oh, it's changing very drastically, and I think given the urgency of climate change, we're seeing, we need better information than we have ever had before. We need it faster. We need it directed at more sectors. And so I think that we're living in a time that, we're seeing great innovations because we're being challenged to provide more and better information. For example, as we were talking before the program started, I think it is just amazing how we're attracting so many entrepreneurs to the Earth observation sector. You're seeing new companies all the time, whether it be in land imaging or in the weather sector, because of the growing needs and because of the foresight of these entrepreneurs that better understand that we're going to need improved water information, improved and more precise weather information. And so I think that we're enjoying a time of great innovation, but the challenges are great. And that's causing a lot of change in the community and also in how the government does business, the government's role, and I think we'll probably talk about a little bit more about that later.
Okay. Paulo, what is your experience? What do you think is the changing need of Earth observation in the current scenario?
Yes. I think that the predominant theme will continue to be, providing tools to better manage the Earth. Mm-hmm. And the resources of the Earth that are under depletion, sometimes abuse, and certainly they are more and more scarce. This is combined with an evolution in technology that allow a colossal amount of information to be gathered, and so the challenge is to kind of corral that information to select relevant information for the users. More and more we see how geolocation information is pertinent to any field of human activities. Just think about a smartphone, and how the smartphone is totally dependent on geographical information. And then if you go in the website, on the web, you go and maybe you go to Yahoo or Google, and you will find yourself at all the headings of Google for a search. All of them has a geographical connotation. You think about map anyone, or direction images anyone, and flights, news are all related to location. So that gives more and more importance to our sector. And again, the challenge, I think the next challenge is clearly to be able to catalog, inventory, and distribute the relevant information to different users.
Okay. Yes, so we are very much in sync that Earth observation is more and more important to the lives today. Paulo, can you tell us how the space-based Earth observation is changing? What are the trends in this domain?
Yes, I think with the technology, since the technology allows that, we're going to see more and more miniaturization of technology. That means that what may appear a dream today of pico satellite as opposed to nanosatellites will come to us much faster than what we could have thought. And in addition, of course, there are new applications, and some of the applications are such as video application, video streaming from space, maybe even ahead of their times in terms of being ready, or the users being ready for them. I mean, the applications, the technology is ready, but it doesn't look necessarily like the users are ready or the applications are ready for those excellent tools.
Okay, Nancy, would you like to throw some light on the trends? What do you see and perceive as how this space-based Earth observation is moving, and what are the trends?
I think that we're seeing a real response from the marketplace, and again, this entrepreneurial spirit, which I think plays such an important role in what we see happening. Whether it's a Skybox or a Planet Labs or a Planet IQ, you have people in the field who are willing to take chances and willing to do things differently. That doesn't mean that we will lose the important role business for a long time, and it's pretty amazing, to think that you're going to see constellations done in 2 years, because as much as many of our bigger systems cost a great deal, of money to produce, I often argue that it's the time that it takes to present, to develop and create these larger satellite systems that becomes most costly.
Okay, I would like to turn this question on to you, Paulo. It's true that, as you have said, the miniaturization is catching up, and there are several entrepreneurs who are trying to innovate and come up with the new ideas and new products in terms of the satellite remote sensing as well. But where do you see the small satellites really competing with the larger satellites and national space agency satellites?
I think ultimately they will. However, in the meantime, they also can complement. There will be always a situation of complementing and competing. And in addition, as the theme of this conversation, I think, goes not only from space, but goes rotate, to look at different angles of a certain object on the Earth by rotating from a software point of view, something that's been collected maybe only under a certain perspective, not different angles, but then you can rotate it given the richness in data. Use the technology, fuse data that would serve very well certain application, and other application may be still served by more traditional means.
Okay, LiDAR is one very good example of a complementing technology aspect. Nancy, I would like to turn this around and say how you see the small satellites being playing a complementing role. Where do they fit in and for what purpose?
Well, I think that given the environmental challenges that we face around the world and the recognition about the importance of this information to our economies, our security, all of these areas, we need everything. And that's one of the things that the Alliance for Earth Observations tries to always communicate, is that we need satellites as much as we need the terrestrial.
Moment.
Oh, I'd be very glad to. Thank you. And we're getting ready to come out with our 2015 report. But what we did is we tried to call on the membership and the experts, such as the Harris Corporation, for example, is a member. We try to call on the experts within our alliance to look at what, if we wanted to communicate, what are the 5 top things that we think that the U.S. should be doing and focusing on. Of course, it's weather, climate. The Arctic, for example, our observational capabilities in the Arctic are very poised for advancement, let's say, rather than putting it in a positive rather than negative. And then, of course, drought, water issues, and lastly, this whole idea of U.S. competitiveness and looking for ways that we can encourage the government to help U.S. industry advance these capabilities worldwide. So those are really the highlights of the report.
Okay. Turning this thing again to you, what do you think are the 5 priorities for Earth observation at this point?
Well, I think predominantly is really to be able to serve the right information at the right time. It's no longer data or imagery, as has been said now for some time, insight. And it's still a valid theme for suppliers in the field to provide insight, and actionable insight. It's even more important. So that can be reached, I think, from different perspective on the subject we already covered about the fusion of data and imagery, about utilization of different technologies, and the advance of technology will increase exponentially the size of data and imagery available. Again, the challenge is to bring it to actionable use. For the
okay,
user.
Moving from space, would you like to add something?
I was just going to add, I think, Paula, you made such good points there, and I often think about people that I've worked with throughout my career, and when I started in this business, I remember one of the comments was, the problem with remote sensing is that it's not like you can just go buy a cup of coffee. Well, we're getting closer to that point where you don't have to be a remote sensing scientist anymore, but you can get the information, you can get the data you need, and you can get it in a timely manner. So I think it's a wonderful time to be looking at these issues.
I fully concur, to the point that my personal vision for the industry is has to deal with, of course, the number of sensors, the amount of information coming, and therefore how in the future, and possibly not a too distant future, we're going to have a model for Earth observation, which is oddly reminding of the model of Uber. You want a ride, you call for a ride. You want a sensor, you'll call for a sensor, and you want for a sensor to deliver certain information.
Oh,
Right.
That will be an ultimate vision, I think. Don't know how many years. Maybe we'll be surprised much earlier than what we think.
Oh, that's a wonderful analogy that you're bringing to the table. Yes, when you said there is a lot of data available, a lot of number of sensors have increased, and the data has increased. How do you see the capability or the ability of the industry to make sense of this data into something actionable information that is required for the user? Where are we? What is the natural progress in that direction?
I think there is still a long way to go, and it involves not only technology, but certainly related to that, training of the users and training designed by the supplier of the technology in such a way that the technology makes sense for the user. So we're going to see more and more efforts in this focus of providing actionable information as opposed to just data or and you know, companies like Harris, you know, are naturally well positioned as we have a very active IT component in different domains, certainly including geospatial.
Okay. Nancy, you have been working on education in terms of Earth observation. Can you share your experience as to where do you see the user's capabilities or the industry's capabilities in turning the data into actionable information and making it really relevant for the users?
Oh, I think it's so accessible now. It's so, you know, NASA has done an incredible job, as has NOAA and USGS, in having tools and products available that make education just a totally different, experience. As I was just saying earlier, one of the things that we've been looking at recently is, looking at camps from space and comparing a digital globe image with a Landsat image, and giving people perspective on their planet, and which is why this technology is so unique. But with education, it's very important to give the experience of working with the data and making sure that when you have information or imagery, that it's relevant to the person.
Yes.
It's no different than what you would do for a business sector or a business person. It has to be relevant.
Okay, so relevant data and relevant information is the buzzword, is the need of the users. How do you see the users' needs evolving in the current circumstances?
Well, I think that refers probably to the fact that it is my view that each industry, each segment of activities will be more and more involved and benefiting from Earth observation. Earth observation started really predominantly many years ago on uniquely military and intelligence applications. Then we had the advent, not necessarily just after that, but after a few years we had the advent of the internet, and how companies like Microsoft, Yahoo, Google have been instrumental in bringing geospatial information to the consumer. So from an end of the spectrum of reserved information for military and intelligence, to the other end of the spectrum, which is consumer, having everyone access to geospatial information, then you see the development of specific verticals for each one of the field of activities. Oil and gas, then mining, even insurance, then city planning, civil engineering, forestry, agriculture. All the different fields are now more and more in demand of geospatial information. And that already developed a series of vertical industry of companies adding values to the data and to the imagery, to the geospatial information. And that, I think, it's a tremendous opportunity on the downstream of value chain from companies collecting information to company delivering actionable, relevant information.
Okay, wonderful. So it is more to do with the solutions, more to do with how we use it, turn around this information into some application.
Yeah, and actionable information. That's a key thing.
Okay. Yeah. You have some intervention to make?
I just was going to mention as well, it's one thing that we haven't touched on yet is, us as citizens collecting information too. So whether it's there's citizen science projects that are very, very large, like the GLOBE program that is sponsored by, led by NASA, sponsored by the US government, and where students do measurements of water and all kinds of different elements. And then, more and more, you have these crowdsourced activities where you have groups like the Audubon Society. They may go out and look for birds and do those recordings. And I think what we're going to see is the challenge of integrating all of these different programs, and there are going to be many more in the future with the satellite and other observation technologies that are provided. So I just don't want to lose fact that we as people are collectors of data too.
Yes, and that's exactly what in a way was promoted very much by the likes of Yahoo, Microsoft, and Google, and others in different countries. Each one, they have their own large server, larger internet service providers. And the like. So certainly, going to the consumer, the way it's already been happening, has been instrumental to promote activities not only at the personal level, and there will be more and more of that, I fully concur, but also for all the verticals of human activities.
Yes, I completely agree with you that each individual is becoming a sensor in himself and herself, and also contributing to the data pool. But let's, and just want to go a bit backwards in terms of, we have very comprehensively discussed the space-based Earth observation. I would also like to understand from you now that you're working with Harris and more on the aerial platform side. What are the trends in aerial Earth observation, and how this is seamlessly complementing with the space and terrestrial Earth observation?
Yeah, the trend are enabled by technology that a company like Harris developed, and just a few reference points. It used to be that the collection capability, for instance, of LiDAR system were predicated on 500 kilohertz of frequency, pulse frequency. Now we're talking about, with an array developed by Harris and recently launched in February, we're talking about 204 million pulse per second. So it's called Geiger mode avalanche photodiode, and the term avalanche, you can see how it applies, because you really are hitting the Earth with a multitude of pulse that enable the collection of information and data. And this rendering of 3D reality of the Earth is substantially enabled by this type of technology, aerial technology, in particular LiDAR, to the point that we are going to see very soon certain applications that were strictly photography, aerial photography, being replaced, given the density of data that we can collect with this type of Geiger mode Harris technology.
Okay. Nancy, I would like to turn this question to you. How do you see the space-based and the aerial-based and terrestrial complementing with each other and providing a seamless data flow for the user?
Well, that's seamless flow. Well, I don't think we're quite there yet, clearly, but with every challenge there's an opportunity. So I think companies like Harris and others and IBM and this is the excitement. This is where the business is. This is going to be the solution for the future. And so, whether it's a space-based technology or airborne or from UAVs, I think that certainly we're going to need this capability to better integrate the information. But we're also going to need policies, new policies to oversee this, and we are getting some of that now, especially in the UAV area. But will it happen quickly enough to help the market along? that's the question.
Okay. Talking about UAVs, as Nancy has suggested, there I see that a lot of disruption is happening in that space. Can you tell us about what kind of innovation is happening in UAVs, and how flexible and how easy is it to use UAVs for Earth observation?
Okay, sure. I think that one of the main challenge is not technological at this point for UAV, certainly not. And the technology challenges of the first phase of application of UAV in Earth observation has been already overcome. The challenge is more in terms of regulatory challenge, the right to fly, and that, of course, depending from country to country. In our own country, here in the United States, it's under study, and there are different concerns. Of course, the FAA I think there will be a globalization, I think, of regulation pretty soon, certainly like there have been for space law and regulations. So we're going to see UAV, again, with a sensor miniaturizing, collecting information that was reserved only to maybe national assets even. And that brings, of course, another big concern, not only from an FAA perspective, but also from a privacy concern, as sensor will be ubiquitous, and there will be the possibility for sensor to be, really literally all over the place. So, we have to make sure that there are the right protection for the citizens.
Okay, so sensors will be all over the place, but the need is to regulate them and have a clear guidance in terms of how to operate them. So what do you think is the way forward for UAV use
Well, I'm really not an expert in UAV use and policy, so maybe Kevin Pomfret should approach that with his new show. But I know for one thing,
and a lot of data as well, but the need is to create more actionable information, more application products, and a lot of solutions for this space. And when it comes to innovative platforms like UAVs, the need is more in terms of guidelines, in terms of regulations and policy framework for this innovative technology to be put to better use. So thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you, Paulo, for joining us on this wonderful debate. We will catch up with you once again with yet another panel discussions on Industry Upbeat and GeoBuiz Live. Until then, goodbye.